I'm really thankful that I got delayed a little bit because being of the theatrical nature that I am, I wanted the appropriate introduction to my soliloquy. And yesterday I didn't have it, and this morning driving here, it came to me, and it was so perfect, it just made me giggle in the car. So by way of introduction, the words of my favorite poem, Hafiz. The sun and moon shudder when I drop my pants. Beware this potent lover. The theme of my...
Wait a minute.
Yeah, can we hold on to that for a second? Show us.
It's going to cost you.
You did a show and tell today?
There are layers, imagine that, layers of themes that I am addressing. One of the significant ones is carrying the paradox of opposition and the integration of opposite poles and transformative energy that can create. And while the archetypal symbol of opposition is sex, the next best and most universal symbolic representation of that is the sun and the moon. So we begin from above. And from above, we have the sun and the moon, the two classic symbols of opposition and union in the sky. And between them is the lock and the key, which represents not only the union of the two, bringing the two together to create that union, but also to remind us of the myth of Persephone, Pandora, which Pandora's box, of course, was a wedding gift from Zeus. It's a nuptial gift with the explicit instructions not to open it. And of course, it is opened. And everybody remembers that what was released into the world was the ills and trials. And very few people remember that the last thing to come out of Pandora's box was hope. This is based on a circle, because as Vincent van Gogh said, life is probably round. More than that, it is a kiva, which is the sacred temenos of the Plains Indians and the Southwest Indians. Therefore, it's based on the medicine wheel and the cardinal directions. We begin the journey in the north, which is the direction of the mind. And so I use this little effigy portrait of an image I photographed at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence to represent the mind and the Renaissance and the awakening of the heart and the soul and the mind during the Renaissance. And we progress on towards the east, and as we go from the north towards the east, the first character we encounter is, of course, Mercury, which is the principal archetype at play in my own mythology. And for me, one of the salient things to remember about Mercury is in classical alchemy, Mercury, Hermes, is represented as a hermaphrodite, which is what represents the union of those opposites, which is the force that galvanizes him to be able to travel to the underworld and come back out unchanged, which to me speaks also to the process of therapy and being a therapist. We move on towards the east, which is the realm of the body and the earth. And so here I have the image, the alchemical image of the Flammarion woodcut. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's small, but the central image in the east here is the tree, which is the conduit of life connecting earth and sky. And our little alchemist friend here is doing the same thing, and the impression or the implication is that once you remove the illusion of the separation of the elements, that earth and sky, man and nature are reunited again. Moving on towards the south, we encounter another one of my cohorts, Hephaestus, the smith of the underworld. And of course, that resonates with me because I still own a 19th century blacksmith shop, so I know what it's like to live in an underworld environment full of smoke and flames and danger. And Hephaestus also is the ugliest of the gods, who was thrown out of Olympus by Zeus, and he is lame from the fall. But even though he's the ugliest of the gods, he is also wed to the most beautiful Aphrodite. We move to the south, the realm of the soul. And here it's full of, we're further away from the sun, but we can still see a bit of it. It's full of strange cloaked figures, and occasionally Persephone shows up. And this body of water here represents the unconscious and its promise of being able to make manifest what is not immediately obvious, and the reminder that the water always reflects the skies and the stars within it. We move from the south towards the west, and we encounter our next guide, Dionysus, the god of ecstasy, to represent the need to be able to stand outside of oneself, and more importantly, you can't know true sanity if you don't have a commensurate experience with divine madness. We move towards the west, the land of transformation, my natal territory. And here there's this little complicated self-portrait. The meditator, myself sitting here meditating inside this temenos, here represented by Stonehenge, next to the totem pole. So he's in temenos with the ancestors. And this story goes counterclockwise, because it's in the labyrinth, counterclockwise is the undoing direction. And we encounter these little medieval creatures down here undoing the flesh and the corporal body. And once that work is done, it turns back to the three fates carrying what remains of my little world. And then we head back towards the north, and our last exterior guide we find, of course, is the theramorph, Pan. Pan is constantly in quest of his true love, the nymph, running through the forest. And of course, in order to avoid him, she transformed herself into a reed. So in the hope of enticing her, he makes the pan flutes out of the reed, and that symbolizes the sublimation of lost love into creative output, which is something I know all about. We return back to the north, and now the frieze on here is written in mirror writing to give homage to my first real mentor and inspirer, Leonardo da Vinci. But it's also in the clockwise direction, because in the labyrinth, the clockwise direction is the motion forward and what you wish to concretize. And the inscription reads, "Beloved Pan, and all ye other gods who haunt this place, grant me a beautiful soul, and let the outer man and the inner man be one." So we go inside. In the sky is my natal chart to represent the condition of the heavens at the time I was born. Doesn't take too much time to explain, but really, really quick. Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Cancer, exalted placement, sign of compassion, Mercury midheaven in the 10th house, calling to communicate into the world, Pluto opposition in the south node, 4th house. I am a natural agent of change, born for transformation, a breaker of hearts as well as rules. This is surrounded by the alchemical word chain, where if you combine heart and earth, you will hear the art. That is the opus, or my alchemical opus, which I'm not supposed to reveal, but as I said, I'm a rule breaker. We return to we arrive in the inside, and we start in the north. You have to look at this later. So in the north, we start with the three fates, setting the stage for fateful events, weaving the thread of life. So in front of them is the invisible hands of fate, guiding my life forward. As we progress towards the east, the realm of the body again, we encounter Aphrodite, the divine mother, the goddess of beauty. And then between her and throughout the south, we have the 9 muses, all of whom I have been seduced by their siren song my whole life. When we get over here to the west, we have Eros and Psyche. And I picked this particular image of Eros and Psyche, a painting by Jacques-Louis David, because you have to look at this later, the coquettish grin on Eros's face. He has just satisfied his true love Psyche while simultaneously rising the ire of his disapproving mother. And now and he can't quite decide which pleasure he enjoys more. That touches me. As we spiral in, this figure is meant to represent dancing owl. Who is my Native American grandmother, who I never met since I'm an orphan, but I know a little bit about her. So she's there to stand in for herself, but all of the ancestors. And then in front of her is the saturnal image of me, bare to the bone, prone in asana before her, and all of the other souls and spirits that haunt this place. And the carpet we're laying on is a colored pencil drawing I did, spirit carpet. So there was a place to meditate on. And of course, because you've heard me say it a few times, underneath it all, there has to be an image of Narcissus observing himself as I want to do, while his true love Echo stands by longingly waiting for him to notice her. And the last thing I'll say is, I had a very clear idea, I thought, when I started this. I had a crisis in the middle, then I came back to it. But what I realized when I was done, which really fascinated me, was it was only on reflection that the exterior is represented by all masculine objects or icons, and the interior is completely feminine, and that describes me to a T. Thanks.